The US is funding its own enemies. It is doing this in many countries around the world. I'm going to go into this today specifically talking about Iraq, talking about what's happening in Syria, and how this is going to play out into the future. Obama's asking Congress for $500 million to help out those Syrian rebels. Now, who exactly are the Syrian rebels? Well, UK Reuters is actually suggesting right here that they're affiliated to Al Qaeda in some cases. They're saying, there's a bunch of different groups, but there is this one that is affiliated to Al Qaeda, and they just slip it in right at the end of that article there. But what exactly is going on? Well, they're saying that the chaos that's occurring in Syria is spilling over into Iraq, and that's causing a problem right now in Iraq. Well, you have this chaos happening, and they're saying part of that problem is because of what's happening in Syria. So if we send money to the Syrian rebels, who just so happen to be part of Al Qaeda, that's somehow going to stop that spilling over into Iraq. Now, you're funding Al Qaeda, and part of them Al Qaeda in Syria, and somehow that's going to stop the Al Qaeda who are attacking those in Iraq right now. This doesn't make a single ounce of sense, but it does if you're part of the military industrial complex who wants that continuation of war. They need war to escalate and increase, never to diminish. That is definitely what they want. Right here, they can twist the words and so on, but this was what was happening in Libya, and they said this is not a war. There is no war at all. All of this is a military operation, and just because we dropped a whole bunch of bombs, and just because we killed a lot of people, and just because a lot of people died thereafter, because we funded the rebels that were there, that is not a war. That is a military operation. Let's go into specifically the War Powers Resolution of 1973, and it said that there must be a declaration of war in order for the president to send troops in. So what is happening right now in Iraq? I thought mission was accomplished, but they're sending in, what they say, some reconnaissance. That's what they're doing right now. However, that's not what they're doing. They're going to escalate this to the point of war yet again, if they're not already doing that. If they're bombing with drones, as they're doing in so many countries around the world, that is war. Just because the other side can't fight back doesn't make it not a war. Al-Qaeda merges with ISIS at the Syria-Iraq border town. What did I just say at the beginning? How right here they're funding Al-Qaeda, and they're doing so in Syria, and that spilled over into Iraq, and of course they're emerging all of a sudden because these factions are coming together and they have a lot of money to do so. Al-Qaeda's Syrian affiliate swears loyalty to ISIS, opening ways for the jihadist group to control vast swaths of land on both sides of the Iraq-Syria border. And exactly that's what I'm talking about. Now right here is even further along. Looted banks fund Iraq fighters eyeing wealth Al-Qaeda never had. And what they said was under bin Laden, they never really had this kind of money. But now they're taking over real assets. They're taking over the oil fields and so on. And they're actually gaining steam and becoming a very, very destructive force, and actually a very powerful army in this region. So right here, they're going to have to play against something that is much more dangerous than it was about a decade and a half ago. And this is going to be an obvious problem for that whole region. It's going to mean more innocent lives lost. That is for sure. They're funding their own enemies. Here's the map right here, just basically showing you the area. Hope you can see it. And I'm just showing you how this whole region essentially has been taken over by this military-industrial complex. They want the oil. They want to steal it all. They want pipelines to be running in every which way. You have Egypt taken over, and all of these other nations here, Syria, you can see how it spills right over into Iraq, their neighboring countries, and Al-Qaeda is taking over. The US is funding their own enemies. This is documented, and it's happening right now, and it's becoming sort of an obvious thing now. So what? They're Al-Qaeda. So what? We're funding them. They're on our side for the time being. Let's just use them as we did in 1979, and nobody's supposed to get upset. Well, that is not the case. This is becoming a huge problem. It's going to create a backlash that could send war right back to the homeland. and I do not want that absolutely. If you want more intel, you need to be an insider, and that is at themoneygps.com. It's totally free. You put your email address in there at the bottom, and you will get occasional emails from me with short, concise info.